November 13th, 2015, 9:47 p.m., Bataclan Concert Hall, Paris. 89 people dead, gunfire still echoing, emergency lights cutting through smoke. A security contractor named Michael Renaud pulls a blonde bartender from under collapsed seating. She's unconscious, bleeding from her temple, clutching a burgundy leather jacket. He doesn't recognize her, just another survivor. EMTs arrive. He vanishes into the chaos before anyone gets his name. 3 days later, French police release his photo as a witness. The bartender wakes up in a hospital, sees the photo on TV. She recognizes him immediately, not from the concert. From a rainy night in Lyon, 2005, when she drove a drunk stranger home. That stranger, Michael Renaud, celebrating his first security contract. The jacket she's holding? The one he left in her car 10 years ago. She kept it because he never came back for it. How did he know she'd be there? October 2005. Lyon, Céline Moreau, 21, bartending at Le Comptoir to pay for nursing school. Third shift, the hours when the city empties and the stragglers arrive. She'd learned to read people quickly, who needed water, who needed a taxi, who needed to be cut off before things got messy. That night, a man stumbled in just after 2 a.m. mid-20s, dark hair, expensive leather jacket soaked through. He was crying and laughing at the same time. His friends had ditched him somewhere near Place Bellecour. Wallet gone, phone dead, no way home. He kept saying he'd just signed his first contract, private security work in Iraq. Big money, he said, the kind that changes everything. Céline didn't ask questions. She just drove him to an address in Villeurbanne, 40 minutes through rain that turned the streets into black mirrors. He passed out in the passenger seat. When they arrived, he stumbled out, mumbled something about remembering this, and disappeared into an apartment building. Into an apartment. The next morning, she found the burgundy jacket in her back seat. Tag inside, MR, 2005. She waited a week for him to come back for it. He never did. Michael Renaud woke up the next afternoon with a headache that felt like a door slamming inside his skull. He remembered the bar, the rain, a blonde woman driving, then nothing. He checked his apartment. Keys, wallet, phone. Everything accounted for except the jacket. He could have gone back to the bar, asked around, but he didn't. People close to him later said he had a philosophy about leaving things behind. A marker, he called it, insurance for the future. If you help someone leave something with them, not because you'll need it back, but because it creates a thread, a connection, something to pull on later if the world collapses. The jacket stayed with Céline. Michael deployed to Baghdad in early 2006, worked convoy security for Aegis Defense Services. By 2008, he'd moved to Afghanistan, then Libya. War zones paid well if you didn't think too hard about what you were protecting. He kept a notebook, not a diary, just names and details. People who'd helped him, a medic in Tikrit who stitched him up off the record, a translator in Kabul who warned him about a bad route, a bartender in Lyon who drove him home in the rain. Her entry, Lyon bartender, Le Comptoir, blonde, drives a Peugeot. He updated it every 2 years. New employer, new city, new patterns. By 2015, Céline had finished nursing school but stayed bartending. Better money, stranger hours, fewer questions. She moved to Paris, lived in Belleville, worked at a place near République. The jacket stayed with her through 3 apartments. She didn't wear it, too big, too masculine, but she kept it in her closet. Sometimes she'd catch the smell, cigarette smoke, rain, something else she couldn't name. She told herself she kept it because she never forgot a face. Really, she kept it because it felt like proof. She Proof that one night she'd done something decent without expecting anything back. Michael, meanwhile, had built a career in places most people only saw on the news. Iraq taught him patience. Afghanistan taught him paranoia. Libya taught him that the difference between a good day and a bad day was often just luck. By late 2015, he was back in Europe, contracted through Garda World for event security, embassies, corporate functions, concerts, quieter work, but the money was steady. When the Eagles of Death metal concert was announced for the Bataclan in Paris, he took the job. Routine security check, easy night, decent pay. He didn't know Céline would be there. But he'd updated his notebook 6 months earlier. Her new address, Belleville, Paris, her workplace, a bar near République. He knew she was in the city. He just didn't know she'd be in the same room. November 13th, 2015, 7 p.m. Michael arrived at the Bataclan 2 hours before doors opened. The venue was a converted theater on Boulevard Voltaire, all red velvet and old wood. He walked the perimeter, checked exits, ran through the standard protocol. 1,500 capacity, 2 levels, multiple exits. Eagles of Death metal wasn't his kind of music, but the crowd would be manageable, young, energetic, not aggressive. By 9 p.m., the place was packed. Michael positioned himself near the right side of the floor, watching the crowd, scanning for problems. Then he saw her, blonde, early 30s, wearing a burgundy leather jacket that looked 2 sizes too big. His jacket. Céline Moreau, the bartender from Lyon. 10 years older, different city, same face. She didn't see him. She was with friends, laughing, moving to the music. Michael stayed where he was. Protocol said keep distance, stay alert, don't engage unless necessary. But he watched her, tracked her movements, her position in the crowd. At 9:40 p.m., 3 men entered through the main doors carrying AK-47s. The first shot sounded like fireworks. Then the screaming started. Michael's training kicked in immediately. Locate exits, assess threats, evacuate civilians. Standard counter-terrorism response. But his eyes went to Céline first. She was 20 feet away, frozen in the crush of bodies trying to escape. The crowd stampeded toward the side exits. She went down under the surge. The Bataclan descended into chaos in under 3 minutes. 89 people dead in 20 minutes. That's the official count. The attackers moved methodically, firing into the crowd, reloading, firing again. Michael moved against the flow of people, shoving through the stampede toward where he'd last seen Céline. Protocol said, evacuate. Training said, secure exits and get out. But protocol is what you follow when it doesn't matter. He navigated by sound, screams, gunfire, then the terrible silence when the shooting paused. The floor was slick with blood and spilled drinks, bodies everywhere, some moving, some not. He found her under a section of collapsed seating near the right wall, unconscious, bleeding from a gash above her temple, and she was clutching the burgundy jacket. She'd been wearing it when she fell. Now it was bunched in her hands like a lifeline. Michael checked her pulse. Steady. He dragged her toward a side exit, staying low, avoiding the main corridors where the gunfire was loudest. Police hadn't breached yet. He could hear sirens outside, but no entry teams. He was alone with 1,000 people hiding in the dark. Céline's eyes fluttered open for a second. She saw his face, focused for just a moment, and whispered, "The drunk guy," he said. "I told you I'd remember." Then her eyes closed again. EMTs arrived at the side exit as he laid her down. He didn't give his name. He just melted back into the crowd of survivors and disappeared before anyone could ask questions. Céline woke up in Hôpital Saint-Louis on November 15th, 2 days after the attack. Head wrapped in gauze, IV in her arm, news playing on a TV mounted to the wall. The screen showed survivor photos, witness appeals, police briefings. Then she saw his face. the man who'd pulled her out. The photo was grainy, pulled from security footage. He was labeled unidentified rescuer. Please contact authorities if you have information. She recognized him immediately, not from the concert. From a rainy night in Lyon 10 years ago when she'd driven a stranger home. The nurses brought her belongings in a clear plastic bag, wallet, phone, keys, and the burgundy jacket folded carefully, tag still visible inside the collar. MR, 2005. She asked the nurse if anyone had come looking for her. No one. Just police taking statements, family calling to check in. The jacket smelled like smoke now, mixed with blood and cordite. She held it and tried to piece together what had happened. He'd been at the concert. He'd found her in the chaos. He'd carried her out, and then he'd left without a word. The TV kept running the same loop. 89 dead, 413 wounded, 3 attackers killed by police when they finally breached at 9:58 p.m. Celine stayed in the hospital for 5 more days. When she was discharged, she took the jacket with her. The photo of Michael stayed in her phone. French media called for witnesses to come forward. He never did. So she decided she'd find him herself. Not to ask why, she thought she already knew. To say thank you. Finding Michael Renaud turned out to be easier than expected. Celine used her nursing connections, hospitals keep databases of private security contractors for embassy events and high-risk venues. She called Garda World, said she was trying to reach a witness from the Bataclan. They wouldn't confirm employment, but they forwarded a letter to his work address. She wrote, "I still have your jacket. I'd like to return it. Celine." 3 weeks passed, no response. She almost gave up. Then in early December, her phone rang. Unknown number. A man's voice, quiet, careful. "It's Michael Renaud. You sent me a letter." They agreed to meet at a cafe in Le Marais, neutral ground, public but not crowded. Celine brought the jacket, cleaned and repaired. The blood had come out mostly. Michael arrived 10 minutes late, looking like he hadn't slept in days. Gaunt face, dark circles under his eyes, hands that never stopped moving. He sat across from her and didn't say anything for a long moment. She slid the jacket across the table. He looked at it but didn't touch it. "It's yours now," he said. "You brought it back to me." She asked the question she'd been holding for 3 weeks. "Why did you search for me?" He leaned back, exhaled. "You drove me home when no one else would. October 2005. I was a mess, broke, scared about Iraq. You didn't ask questions, you just helped. I don't forget that." She studied his face, trying to match it to the drunk 23-year-old from a decade ago. "You could have died looking for me." He shrugged. "I could have died doing nothing. At least this way the math worked out." Michael pulled a small notebook from his jacket pocket and set it on the table between them. Black leather, worn at the edges, pages filled with handwriting. 47 names, he said. People who helped me over the last 10 years. Medics, drivers, translators, strangers who didn't have to do anything but did anyway. He flipped to the first page. Celine's name at the top. Lyon bartender Le Comptoir, blonde, drives a Peugeot. Below it updates 2007, still at Le Comptoir, 2010, nursing school, moved to 14th arrondissement. 2013, Paris, Belleville, bartending near République. She stared at the entries. "You've been tracking me for 10 years? He shook his head. "Not tracking. Checking in. I update the notebook every couple of years. New jobs, new cities, new patterns. It's not about stalking people, it's about being there if they need me." Celine felt something cold settle in her chest. "That's not normal." Michael smiled for the first time, a brief, tired thing. "No, it's not, but neither is driving a drunk stranger 40 minutes in the rain because he had no one else." He flipped through the notebook. Names, dates, locations, a medic in Tikrit, a translator in Kabul, a shopkeeper in Tripoli. At the Bataclan, I saved 3 other people, all from this list, people who'd helped me when I needed it. He closed the notebook, slid it back into his pocket. Loyalty isn't a feeling, it's a system. You help me, I remember. If the world collapses and I'm nearby, I come find you. That's the deal. Celine didn't know what to say. The cafe hummed around them, espresso machines hissing, conversations overlapping. Finally, she said, "You could have just sent a thank you card." Michael picked up the jacket, held it for a moment, then set it back down. This was my thank you card. Took 10 years to deliver. The story broke in March 2016. French government announced honors for Bataclan responders and survivors. Médaille de la Bravoure, awarded for exceptional acts of courage and resilience during the November 13th attacks. Celine and Michael were both on the list. Her citation read, "Civilian heroism, assisted in the rescue of multiple survivors while wounded. His private security contractor acted beyond duty to save lives under fire." The media loved it. The bartender and the bodyguard, they called it. Headlines wrote themselves. A decade-old favor repaid in the middle of a terrorist attack. Celine hated the attention. Reporters called, asking for interviews, wanting to know how she'd saved 3 people. She kept saying she didn't save anyone. Michael did. But the narrative was already set. The ceremony took place at the Palais Bourbon, French National Assembly. 200 attendees, government officials, survivors, families of the dead. Celine wore a simple black dress. Michael wore a suit that looked like it had been rented that morning. When they called her name, she walked to the podium, shook hands with the interior minister, accepted the medal in its velvet box. The applause felt wrong, too loud for something that still woke her up at night. When they called Michael's name, he did the same. No speech, no smile, just a nod and a handshake. Afterward, outside the assembly hall, photographers surrounded them. Celine stood next to Michael, holding the medal she didn't want, answering questions she didn't understand. "How does it feel to be a hero?" one reporter asked. Michael answered before she could. "We're not heroes. We're just people who were there when it mattered." The photographer captured that moment. 2 people standing side by side, holding medals, looking like they'd rather be anywhere else. That photo ran in Le Monde the next day. Caption: "Survivors or saviors? For Bataclan rescuers, the line is blurred. Fame is what strangers give you. Respect is what you earn in silence." Michael left private security 3 months after the ceremony. He told Celine it wasn't a choice. His body made it for him. PTSD, the doctors called it. Nightmares, flashbacks, hypervigilance. He'd wake up at 3 a.m. convinced he was back at the Bataclan, hearing gunfire that wasn't there. Couldn't work security anymore. Couldn't be in crowds. Couldn't trust his own perception of danger. Celine stopped bartending around the same time. She finished her nursing degree, specialized in trauma care. Emergency rooms felt right. Controlled chaos, clear protocols, measurable outcomes. The opposite of that night in November. They stayed in contact. Not romance, something deeper. Shared language of survival. Text messages at odd hours. Can't sleep. Me neither. Coffee tomorrow? Yeah. The jacket became a strange artifact between them. She'd returned it at the cafe in December. He'd left it on the table when he walked out. She took it home again. A month later, he showed up at her apartment, handed it back. "You kept it for 10 years. It's yours." She tried to refuse. He insisted, back and forth, until finally she hung it in her closet and stopped arguing. By mid-2016, the media had moved on. New attacks, new stories, new heroes. Celine and Michael faded back into private life. Occasionally, someone would recognize them. A barista, a taxi driver, someone who'd seen the photo in Le Monde. "You're the Bataclan people, right?" They'd nod, smile politely, and leave as quickly as possible. The cost of saving someone's life doesn't end when they start breathing again. It extends forward, a weight that shifts but never disappears. Celine saw it in Michael's eyes every time they met. He saw it in hers too. Two people bound by a moment they couldn't undo and wouldn't want to, even if they could. By late 2017, Michael had found a new direction. He opened a security training firm in the 11th arrondissement, civilian focus, self-defense courses, crisis response training, active shooter scenarios. The people who signed up were mostly office workers, teachers, parents, people who'd watched the news and realized the world could collapse without warning. Michael taught them what he knew. Stay low, move fast, know your exits, don't freeze. His approach was practical, not militaristic. "You're not trying to be a hero," he'd tell his students, "you're trying to get home." Celine visited the training center once, watched him run a class through an evacuation drill. He was calm, patient, methodical, completely different from the gaunt, sleepless man she'd met in the cafe 2 years earlier. Afterward, they went for coffee. She asked if the work helped. He said, "It doesn't fix anything, but it gives the fear somewhere to go." Celine had her own version of that. She worked trauma nursing at Hôpital Saint-Louis, the same place she'd woken up after the attack. Mass casualty events, car accidents, stabbings, overdoses. She'd learned to compartmentalize, emotions in one box, procedure in another. Sometimes the boxes leaked, but mostly they held. One evening in early 2018, Michael called her. "I have something for you. Can you come by the office?" She arrived after her shift, still in scrubs. The training center was empty, lights off except for his office. He led her inside. On the wall behind his desk, framed in simple black wood, the burgundy leather jacket. Below it, a small plaque with an inscription. "A debt repaid is a circle closed, but some circles are worth keeping open." Celine stared at it. "You framed your jacket." Michael shook his head. "Our jacket. It's been yours longer than it was ever mine." She reached out, touched the glass. The leather looked different under gallery lighting, richer, older, more significant than it had any right to be. The jacket stayed on the wall. Michael's training firm grew steadily. Word of mouth, mostly. People who'd taken his courses told friends who told family. By mid-2018, he had 3 instructors working for him and a waiting list for classes. Celine continued at St. Louis, took on mentorship roles for new trauma nurses. They met for coffee every few weeks. Less about the Bataclan now, more about ordinary life. Work frustrations, apartment problems, mundane complaints that felt like luxuries. One afternoon, in October 2018, Celine noticed something on Michael's desk. A new notebook, black leather, identical to the old one. But this one was mostly blank. Just a few names written in the same careful handwriting. She picked it up without asking. "Still tracking debts?" Michael looked up from his computer, smiled. "Not debts. People worth protecting." She flipped through the pages. Her name was there, first entry, but the others weren't people who'd helped him. They were his students, people who'd taken his courses, learned his methods, stayed in touch. "I'm not tracking favors anymore," he said. "I'm tracking people I'd show up for. Different system, same principle." Celine set the notebook down. "You ever think about what would have happened if you hadn't been at the Bataclan?" Michael leaned back in his chair. "Every day. But I was there. That's what counts." She gestured at the framed jacket. And this? What does it count as? He thought for a moment. Proof that paying attention matters. You paid attention to a drunk stranger in 2005. I paid attention to you for 10 years. When it mattered, we were both ready. Celine didn't argue. The logic was circular, obsessive, maybe a little broken. But it had worked. That was hard to dispute. In the end, it wasn't about repaying a favor. It was about being the person who shows up when the world collapses. Michael understood that before Celine did. He'd learned it in war zones, in places where the difference between surviving and dying often came down to whether someone remembered your face. Celine learned it on November 13th, 2015, when a man she'd driven home a decade earlier pulled her out of chaos and disappeared before she could say thank you. The burgundy jacket still hangs in Michael's office, framed and lit by morning sun. Visitors ask about it sometimes. He tells them it's a reminder of what exactly he doesn't always explain. Some understand without asking. The leather is worn now, creased from years of use before it became a museum piece. The tag inside still reads MR 2005, though most people never see it through the glass. Beneath the frame on Michael's desk sits the new notebook. More names now than when Celine first saw it. His students, her colleagues, people they've both met who seemed worth remembering. Not for what they've done, but for what they might need. The system evolved, but the principle stayed the same. Pay attention, remember, show up. In late 2019, Celine and Michael attended a Bataclan memorial ceremony. 4 years since the attack, they stood in the crowd, didn't speak to reporters, didn't wear their medals. Just two people among hundreds, remembering a night that had rewritten their lives. Afterward, walking through the 11th arrondissement, Celine asked, "You ever regret keeping that notebook?" Michael shook his head. "Never. You?" "No," she said, "but I'm glad I drove you home." "Me too."